Coming up on stage next, I'd like to introduce and welcome on stage Automation Anywhere are going to host a session on transitioning global business services for the smart and automated business environment. So Mihir Shukla, please. Mihir is the CEO and founder of Automation Anywhere. Mihir, welcome. Let's give him a big round of applause. And along with him, hi Mihir. Welcome. And along with Mihir is Viji. Viji Varghese is the head of Center of Excellence for Robotics at ANZ. Viji, please come on stage. Let's give them both a big round of applause. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Okay, all right. We're excited to be here. We have exciting 30 minutes planned. We'll spend first few minutes on defining digital workforce, and then we will take Viji's help. Viji will walk us through his journey and share his experiences. Let's get started. So we are surrounded by digital disruption. Since 2000, 50 of the Fortune 500 companies have disappeared. And this trend is continuing. So the digital disruption is the most strategic risk to all of our businesses. And we are surrounded by many of them. In fact, we are consumers of many. But the disruption of digital workforce is arguably larger than many of those. As wonderful as Uber, Airbnb, and self-driving car are, they affect a single industry. But digital workforce fundamentally changes how work gets done, which means it affects virtually every single industry. Let's define what a digital workforce is. But before we do that, let's look at how we work today. Regardless of industry you are in, we think about things, then we do something about it, then we analyze what we have done, and we drink coffee or tea. And that's pretty much work, no matter what you do. Today's technologies are augmenting these functions. So cognitive, which thinks with you, RPA, as we all know, stands for robotic process automation. It can do many of the things that we do on a computer. It can read a screen, it can type on a screen, it can apply a set of rules, it can operate any application just like people can. And the embedded analytics gives you real-time data as soon as something happens. This three technology of think, do, and analyze, when it comes together, it creates a true augmented digital worker, a digital workforce. Let's look at what that means in terms of its impact on business. Let's say before, if you operated a shared service operation with 5,000 people and 75 million CapEx and produced 10 million transactions. It fundamentally changes with digital workforce. Now you only need 500 people, 2,000 digital workforce, 15 million budget, and you produce 5 times more. This is not small. This is significant. This is 5 times the productivity at 1/5 the cost. The old model is a Blockbuster model. New model is a Netflix model. Old model is a Barnes & Noble model. New is the Amazon model. This kind of digital disruption is coming to every business. Imagine 5 banks operate with this new digital operating model. How do other 195 banks compete? What happens when 3 retailers operate with this digital model? 5 healthcare, 2 oil and gas, I can go on. The nature of this digital operating model will ensure that once it happens anywhere, it must happen everywhere. Let's look at it, what does this mean for us in future? In next 5 years, significant majority of things that can be automated will be automated. Why do I say that? First of all, look at how, regardless of industry you are in, how our processes work. So every process, no matter what industry you are in, has 6 basic components to it. You capture the data, then you enrich the data, then you validate the data, then you perform the process, you reconcile your data, and then you analyze and report on it. And the technologies of today can do end-to-end automation on an entire process. If you have an unstructured data, cognitive can convert it into structured. If you already, and then feed into the RPA. If you already have a structured data, RPA can take it all the way through. And analytics can begin to analyze as soon as process runs. It's funny how in business world we live with the efficiency we live with. So if you take an example of a sports, if I told you that we will do a month-end analysis of a sports game, it sounds odd. Why would you do a month? Yeah? As soon as sports finish, at the most 30 minutes after it, we are done analyzing a sport. Yet in business, we have a term called month-end reports. So there is so much room for improvement with the real-time analytics. So that's what digital workforce is. Let's define how are we going to make this transformation. There are 3 stages to it: start, scale, and transform. And in each stage, there are different things you must do. We have seen implementations where people do lots of transform kind of governance in a start stage. Yeah? And then you end up after a year, 4 bots and lots of governance. That's not the right model. So let's invite Viji, who has gone through these phases, learned a lot, probably made a few mistakes and learned a lot, to walk us through these phases. Welcome, Viji. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Viji is leader of ANZ Bank, the RPA initiative of ANZ Bank. Yeah. Thank you, I just promoted you. RPA initiative of ANZ Bank. How about you, many people know ANZ Bank, but how about you tell us, those of you who don't know it, how about you tell us a little bit about it?
Okay. Thank you. To start off with, I sometimes tend to be a bit controversial, so apologies to anybody who I hurt during this conference, because sometimes people view robotics and politicians the same. Yeah? So I don't mean to hurt anybody. So I'll just give a quick introduction. ANZ Bank is about 48,000 people in about 18 countries, predominantly with 4 hubs in India, China, Australia, and Malaysia. So one of the things that we have done is we started this journey in 2014. There are lots of learnings through this journey, but we are roughly run about 2,000 bots today on 85% of our processes out of 17 countries and in multiple areas. So in every area that we could do, HR, finance, mortgage, IT, all such areas. So really, it's a bank which has got multiple processes, multiple touch points, and historically, where we have gaps in our service proposition because of legacy systems, we have put people there. Our idea is to target each of those gaps and move human workforce and replace it with a digital workforce.
It's fantastic. 85% of processes have bots in it. That's true digital transformation. Let's get more into it. So how did you, what problems were you trying to solve? Why did you start this journey 2 or 3 years ago when you started?
So I've spent roughly about 18 years in a shared services organization, started in 2000. And like everybody else, we started shared services out of India for cost arbitrage. Pretty soon, 18 years later, cost arbitrage was a given. We had more number of people in the hubs or global service centers, as we call them. And reality is we were running out of ideas to take care of volume variability. What do I mean by volume variability? Any marketing campaign meant that we would have hundreds of people to be recruited, trained, and then at the end of this campaign, do something with them. Usually redeploy and all those. And we were running out of this, the traditional methods of doing it, such as cross-training, bringing in contractors. We have exhausted all of that. And with the new financial environment around, adding building and adding more seats was no more an option for most banks around the world. So to address this, we had thought of a couple of options. One of them was robotics. Why did we choose robotics? Is because we had people in the shared services who spent 10 years on a process. These were graduates and postgraduates. So there was a tremendous amount of human intellect which was stuck in day-to-day processing. They weren't moving up the value chain. We had the volume variability, which means we couldn't recruit people or add more seats. So at that point, we said, let's look at what is there. And these were the challenges, which I'm sure a lot of you would recognize in a shared service organization. Inconsistent human performance, high volumes due to business, high volume variability because of marketing campaigns, regulatory action. In terms of exceptions to customer flexibility, lots of our customers want different things, and not everything can be trained. Manually intensive, which means high cost, pretty much cost arbitrage was reducing every day. The point about unused human intellect, we had graduates and postgraduates doing data entry jobs, monotonous job content. They were telling us now that they're bored of their jobs, and we had no way to let them go. Scaling up our FTEs. So all of this was the reason why we started.
I'm sure most of us relate to all these challenges. How did you go about it then?
So like everything, and I don't know if it's typical to banks. So we did POC with five of our 5 vendors, and then select one vendor who can do it. And like any other organization, we wanted to prove a concept. And how did we go about? We picked up the most difficult process that we had, and just to prove the concept that anything can be automated. And we picked up client onboarding. It's the most complex process any bank will have because there are hundreds of directors, underlying companies, signatories. We wanted to prove a point that we can automate anything. So we picked up this process, we automated it, and we felt proud about it, we automated. But we sat back and realized we took 6 months to do a robotic process automation, which gave us 4 FTE benefit. And then we went back to the drawing board and saying, it can't take you 6 months to build one bot. And we went on reinventing ourselves again and again. And today we have something called as a happy path. We only automate happy paths. And people may ask what a happy path is. It's like if you have a tree, we only automate the trunk of it, which means we don't touch exceptions, we don't touch channels. And as a result, we now deliver about 40 bots a week.
Okay. So you could automate exceptions, but we choose not to.
Yeah.
Because?
So of the 6 months we spent doing client onboarding, 3 months of that we waited to do UAT. Because we had this exception which comes up once in 3 months. So we couldn't put an untested thing into, so we waited for exceptions to appear so that we can test them. So we said, if that is the case, when an exception does arrive, we'll build the bot. So that's how we said, no exceptions, we will test a vanilla process. Once we get the benefits out of that, we'll keep adding and enriching the robot.
Okay. So I've heard that you could go deep into one area or you can do multiple areas. Which approach did you take? And what's your opinion of it? How should one go about it?
We started with deep. That means every type of customer, limited liability, partnerships, everything. And then we realized that by going deep, we only just waste time waiting for Kataka. So we then moved to breadth instead of depth, because that means we could touch multiple processes. And what it helped us in doing is it spread the culture within the organization, which means I train 20 people every week on automation. It helped me touch every process within the bank, which means there were people who are passionate about it to get the processes automated. Had I done with that with the depth, I would just have touched one process.
Okay. So you are a bank, and so governance would be a big part of it. How did you approach the governance challenge?
So a lot of people think that to achieve speed, we should have no governance. My point is what I call as minimal viable governance, which means at a POC stage, you have governance which is suitable for a POC. And when you're running a massive program, you run a governance which is watertight. But if you start with a watertight governance for one POC, you will spend 9 months doing the POC.
Okay. What are the other aspects of governance? Could you walk us through it?
Yeah. So I'll take it first to the strategy, and that is something that we did it in. We got, when we started off doing this bit about doing the breadth of the processes. Why did we choose to do that? We started by doing what we call as a groundswell. Okay? We wanted people to come back and say, we don't want to do this job. Please automate this job so I can move and do something else in my life. So we built a groundswell. So every Mondays we used to run automation training. 20 people were team leaders used to come up with 20 ideas, and by Friday we tell them if you can automate or not. We also had senior management who were absolutely bought onto this thing, both from IT and operations, and we got a strategy where it started coming from both ends, both from lower management and higher management. And this is something that we said. After the first 6 months, we said if you don't spread this across the organization, it's not going to become a revolution around the organization. So we said seeing is believing. So we started developing bots in every business and saying, have a bot, see it, run it, and if you feel right about it, come back. Okay. Yeah, so we got this across several businesses. Right. And there's an example here. I had my CEO who's never heard about RPA. He's spent about 45 years in banking, and was I wouldn't say a detractor, but was a skeptic. He didn't know whether it'll work. Right. And I used him to popularize RPA. So I told him that his name is Jeremy Dean, and so I said, Jerry, come on, I'll teach you how to build a bot. Okay. And I said, Viji, I'm not a geek. I don't know how to build a bot. And I said, give me 10 minutes. So what I basically got him to do is, in 10 minutes, I built a bot which wishes all of staff happy birthdays on the respective days and sends them a bouquet of flowers. It was very simple. An Excel sheet, date and time machine of the computer, and an email address against each of those names. And I got a certificate printed in advance because I was sure he could do it. I got it framed, and I gave it to him and said, you are now an official bot builder. And we tweeted it. Okay. And there are hundreds of likes on them. And suddenly, he was my biggest supporter of RPA.
Fantastic.
So we got him to believe that. And now if anybody says anything about RPA, he's the first one to go behind them with a hammer.
Right. I think what I find interesting is that in software world, we use this agile methodology and minimum viable product and try to get products out with the right quality. There are similar parallels here, the way, with all the governance in place, how you try to get things out there.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
And that's what I said. Get it out fast, because if you're going to build this, you've got to build up on the momentum. So implementation speed we got, and choosing the right process. From the first one, we realized choosing the most hardest process may prove a point that you can automate it, but will not give you the benefits, because you want this across multiple processes. In every process, it touches at least an FTE of benefit. So you want this spread across your organization. So choose this process wisely.
Do you pick the process with maximum volume, or how do you? What's the rule of thumb?
So what we have done is we always. I have something for you at the end of it. Hold that thought.
Okay.
We have something for you.
Okay.
So we'll come there in a minute. And what we did this was design thinking. In terms of, we didn't want people to randomly go and design bots on it. So we said, every bot has to follow the design principle of data to be captured upfront. It has to be executed, enriched, and then executed. So we said capturing can be done by bots or humans. Enrichment can be done by bots or humans. When I say enrichment, it's data that's missing for execution. but execution is always to be done by bots. So once we got the principle right, we got it cookie cutter for all our bots, which means we exactly know what is to be built in these three phases. And that's how we got speed.
Okay. So keep going. You have the, so,
Yeah.
so where are you? Walk us through the journey and how it went.
So this is roughly we spent about 3 months in vendor selection.
Yeah.
We got an RPA team set up in 14 months. We got go live and production 3 months.
Yeah.
And we got industrial design for infrastructure because we were becoming bigger and bigger every day. So it took us 2 months.
Okay.
And it took us 7 months to build a business as usual RPA program with very, very strong governance.
Okay.
So, and that's how we've gone. So this is how the COE team has moved. We started off with 2 developers, and we went up to 60 using different skills. But what really changed is how many people we trained on RPA so that they can be our ambassadors in the processes. So we trained over 500 people who don't do development as a day job, but who know what can be automated. They are my brand ambassadors in the rest of the operations. They go and identify processes, tip me off saying, I've got a process for you, Viji. So I've got 500 odd brand ambassadors apart from the 60 that I've trained in the
That's
series.
fantastic. I think in order to change the culture, you had many of these ambassadors in the organization. Yeah. Sully, how are we doing on time? There is no time clock here. 10 minutes, okay. How about we spend just 2 minutes on governance? Would you have a slide on it? So, walk us through a little bit and then we go to the next one.
Typically, these components are not a surprise, and we learned it out of experience that any governance model is supposed to have these 15 components, especially for an RPA program, because it is at such a rapid pace. If you don't have governance around what is the standard documentation you need to do. So Mihir saw one of the solution design documents that I signed. Typically, a solution design document in an environment like development is about 50 pages minimum. Right. We got a solution design document on 10 lines on Excel. Okay? Because what we realized is a solution design document is a 50-page template. There's only 15 words with change on it. So we captured those 15 words and we put that on an Excel. Okay. But we said this is standard document. You've got to have this. Right. The bot design, the bot benefits, everything. Right. And there are tons of it that we can talk about, but this is basic. And one of the things that we got it later on was the change control board. Is how do we, because there are 2,000 bots now running, right. How do we get a change control board instituted for such a large volume? So usually what happens is you have a change control board for one system. But now we have a change control board for 2,000 bots running across 19 odd systems. Right. ANZ itself, like any other bank, has got 2,800 assets. Right. So we've got a very, very strong change control board, which is me, the process owner, and the service owner. That's it. That's
fantastic. A very fantastic mix of scale and governance and speed, all of it together.
Absolutely.
How about we begin to summarize? Tell us what you have learned at the end of the journey.
So, 10 commandments for the Lord. I've got 5. Yeah. But commandment number 1, and this is something that we do, empower the people working on the process to come up with the idea. It's because if you send in a black belt or if you send in an IT guy, they probably will spend a lot of time doing understanding the process. But if you have a person who's currently doing the process, he will do it in much faster. He'll capture your requirements up front. So empower the people on the process to decide what to automate. Tackle the majority first. This is what I said. Don't spend time on small processes that you have. If you have a process where 80% of your volume flows through, that's the process that you touch through. Right. Okay? Go wide, not deep, for real impact. Because what we are trying to do is culturally change what shared services organizations are. So if you go deep, you probably touch one part of the organization. It's better that you go wide. You'll get loads and loads of ideas to automate. Okay. Recycle and reuse. Do not build everything from the scratch. Build components that can be switched off and switch on. For example, an email system that you have. build the whole bot on it, and you can switch off which components you don't want. So try and reuse and recycle as much as you can. Follow the design principle. When you follow the design principle, it's not only easy to build, it's also easy to maintain, because you exactly know what the component is and what can go wrong with it.
All right. So tell us in the end what return you got on your investment, and tell us where you are going next.
So that's how many projects we did. And the total payback for this whole program is 9.4 months. This is, I mean, we were having a discussion with some of the very senior bankers, and they said, oh, you're delivering 1 FTE per project. And I turned around and told them that, look, you've been here in the bank for 25 years. How many projects do you have with a return of 9.4 months, which has given you 346 FTE in a year? Everybody went quiet. Yeah. So we got about 3.45 million cost avoidance in the last 1 year. We develop 20 projects a week. Out of the things, we get about 40 bots a week on each of these projects. 1 FTE is freed up every day, so as you go along, it keeps on giving you that benefit. 40 bots per week we develop with the speed. And we have avoided 34 regulatory breaches. There's no price for this, because regulators can come up with anything.
That's a big deal.
It's big, because a regulator can fine you $50 million, or there's no price for it. But that is what we are very proud of, is to be compliant with our regulators.
So that is obviously not included in your cost avoidance.
No, it is not. It's not.
Okay.
So this is our aspiration next year. We want to do 12,000 bots by 2018 across the group. We are changing a lot of the things that we are doing, and we're trying to bring down the 34 average days to 12 days. Okay. So we want to do a project every 12 days.
Okay, it's fantastic. Yeah. That's an amazing story. How about we take some questions? Do we have time for questions?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
A few more questions. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Viji. Thank you, Mihir. Sure. We're going to look at a few questions that have come up. As they pop in, you can also choose to vote for some of these. So the single largest question is, how does your control, Viji, if you can come back here, yeah. Sorry. How does your control and governance framework needs to adapt to digital workforce? If you can use this, yeah.
So when a lot of people from risk and IT speak about governance and control, one question that they're not asking very clearly is, who's accountable when something goes wrong? That's the real question they want to ask. Yeah? And what we have told people is, look, this process has controls which is manual in nature. Okay? We are not doing away with controls. We are only enforcing the controls, because if you had a manual entry by somebody, you would get a checker to check it. That's your current control. We are not doing away with that. But we are putting in additional controls. For example, we have a bot which goes and checks if the number of input instructions is equal to the number of output instructions. That was not there in today's. So we are giving you a better controlled environment when you are using digital workforce.
Okay. Thank you, Viji. One more question. I'm sure you're the darling of this event so far. 12,000 bots sounds exciting. I think the question here is, how have people taken to the change? Is there a lot of resistance? Because obviously people start to fear there's doomsday coming and massive job losses at the bank. And of course, Mihir, you said, if somebody starts doing it anywhere, then everybody have to do it everywhere. So how does that, how do you go through that change journey within ANZ?
So just that, I know a lot of people think, or people are scared of bots. My staff are absolutely passionate about the bots like the children. Yeah. If a bot goes down, they come running to the command center saying, fix it. I don't want to go back to doing a boring job. Yeah. I was having my coffee. Okay? So people absolutely love it. Reason for that is, while we automated all of these roles, it didn't mean that we lost the people. We just moved in more high-end work from onshore or other areas, like analyzing data, helping us with new processes and products. These people have moved on to higher jobs. They don't want to go back to their old jobs. And hence, people absolutely love it.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Mihir, some closing comments, and then we'll wrap up.
I think if any of you have more questions, Viji he could probably write a book on it. Tomorrow around the same time, about 2:10, there is a panel where 4 large customers are going to talk about their journey, and Viji can go in a lot more detail. So if any of you have questions. I think on a closing remark, what I would mention is that as a CEO of a software company, I can tell you this with absolute certainty, that software doesn't change the world. People do. As people, we have harnessed wild horses and steam engines and internets and nuclear energy. This is just another technology for us to harness. And this technology is here. If Viji is dreaming of 12,000 bots, the question for all of you is, how will you lead this? Thank you.
Mihir and Viji, thank you very much. I'd like to give them a big round of applause. Mihir, really well appreciate it. Viji, thank you.